It seems like the agenda is even a big part of that, even if it's an internal gauge. Is that kind of correct?
Oh, that's absolutely, yeah. I'm a big believer that if you can't measure it, why are you doing it?
Gotcha.
And so I'm a huge proponent of making sure that I hold myself accountable to my caucus, to my chamber, with the Senate at large, and to the people who sent me here from Senate District 47.
All right, hey guys, what's going on? Caden Cleveland back here again with another episode of OK Senate on deck. Of course, we have President Pro Tem, Senator Greg Treat, on the show this week. What we're going to be talking about in this episode, guys, is the 2020 census. And specifically, we're going to be talking about why this is such a significant issue, what role the legislature plays in this process, and how it impacts everyday Oklahomans. So hang tight, guys. We're going to be talking about that, plus federal grants, what the legislature is doing to make sure that your tax dollars are being spent wisely. So hang tight. We'll be right back with another episode of OK Senate on deck. All right, 3, 2, 1, and here we go. All right, hey everybody, what's going on? Caden Cleveland back here again with another episode of OK Senate on deck. I believe this is episode 36, Pro Tim.
36, the big 3-6.
How you feeling about that? Feeling pretty good about it?
I feel tremendous about it. Yeah, 36.
Right on. Well, hey, there's a lot of things going on here at the Capitol that wanted to get your thoughts on. But before we get there, really wanted to get your thoughts on a lot of the things that the Senate has been working on lately. There's a lot of interim studies going on, the healthcare working groups going on. Is there anything else going on behind the scenes? I know it's interim, but there's still always stuff going on here.
Oh, so there's a ton of work still going on. We're obviously monitoring the revenues as they come into the state as we're looking at the budget. So our budget team's already working hard on that. You mentioned the interim studies. Interim studies is really generic, but there are a ton of interim studies going on, anywhere from some other healthcare related issues to transportation to contracting, county government. I mean, there's a whole myriad of issues that we look at during the interim. It's been extremely busy up here on that. That's not including the special working group on the healthcare working group that we're looking at. Medicaid, as well as other issues in that interim. It's not really an interim study, working group with the House, the Senate, and the governor has 2 representatives on it. So it's been a whirlwind interim. Right. And then we also, just as the Republican caucus, we've been working internally on coming up with an agenda. Last year we were extremely successful. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We had a 4-point agenda and achieved all 4 points of those. Obviously, we didn't do that on our own. We had to have the help and the buy-in from the House and the governor's office. We worked really good teamwork between the 3 entities.
Quick question for you on not specifics into the agenda, but just so for somebody who may not know why the Senate GOP has an agenda, can you kind of give us some background on that? What is it? What's the reasoning for having an agenda at all?
Yeah, if you don't set any goals, you'll achieve nothing.
Oh, pretty simple, straightforward there. Right?
Yeah, it's very. I mean, it's just like personal life, business. You've got to make sure that you're focused on what you're trying to achieve that year. And I'm a big believer in having an agenda to make sure that we know we can measure success. Yep. We can say, did we actually achieve what we said we were going to achieve? And also for Oklahomans to know what we're focused on. Make sure it aligns with what they're focused on.
I've noticed you're big on that. I mean, even when we talk about LOFT, you're all about measuring, what's then the outcomes of it. And you're all about measuring what level of success that the Senate or even just the legislature in general has had. It seems like the agenda is even a big part of that, even if it's an internal gauge. Is that kind of correct?
Oh, that's absolutely. Yeah, I'm a big believer that if you can't measure it, why are you doing it?
Gotcha.
And so I'm a huge proponent of making sure that I hold myself accountable. Yeah. To my caucus, to my chamber with the Senate at large, and to the people who sent me here from Senate District 47.
Gotcha. Well, beyond what's going on right now, I wanted to ask you about two topics that have been really popular as of late just here in Oklahoma. One of those things is redistricting. The second thing that we'll get to here in just a little bit is the federal grant, the executive order that went out about that. I want to get your thoughts on that. Yeah. But first, for somebody at home that may not know exactly what redistricting is and the importance of it, what importance does that play in the legislative process?
Yeah, redistricting isn't a sexy issue outside of this building a lot of times, but it impacts everyone's life.
Okay.
So every 10 years required by the U.S. Constitution, they do a census. And the first part of redistricting is looking at the inputs. So we're trying to make sure that we participate in complete count, which is just trying to get everyone from every different region of Oklahoma,
Right.
every socioeconomic, every demographic gets properly counted.
That's good. Okay.
And so we're putting a lot of focus on trying to get a real count there. And then the output of that, there's several outputs. The most obvious one is legislative districts and congressional districts get redrawn. They get redrawn the year after the census. So you'll have the census in 2020 coming up right around the corner.
Right.
And then we will get that data back around March of the next year and start drawing legislative and congressional districts based off of that.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's extremely important that every person's vote counts.
Right.
So when you're looking at redistricting, it's about making sure that you have the same number of people in each district, but also like interest play a part in it.
That's right.
It's an extremely important deal that we take seriously. Also, federal money comes down to the states, redistributed to the states,
right,
based on the census numbers.
Okay.
When you hear about Oklahoma's uninsured population, that came straight out of the last census.
Oh, okay.
And so the census is extremely important in making decisions, not just on how do we draw legislative boundaries, but are we going to get money for healthcare? Are we going to get money for roads? Are we going to get money this and that? And it's extremely important on a federal budget. Also, businesses make decisions moving into a state based on census counts. How educated is the population? What's the average income?
Gotcha.
Years of experience. Those things are critical for our state.
And like you said, it's not a sexy issue at all. Outside the Capitol, not many people know, honestly, too much about it. They hear what it is. They don't really know what it is, though. But just listening to you, it sounds like it's an extremely important topic that will be looked at. So what is the Senate doing exactly to start preparing for that?
Yeah, so a week or so ago, I announced the hiring of an individual to come on staff to help, both with the complete count to make sure that we actually get Oklahomans counted. That also impacts how many congressional seats you have and how many electoral votes you have at Electoral College. So right now we have 5 congressmen and 2 senators. So that means we have 7 electoral votes. If your population doesn't keep pace with the rest of the country, you can lose congressional seats. We've done that here in Oklahoma.
Right.
Or if your state is growing disproportionate to the rest of the country, you can actually gain seats.
Oh, okay,
so it's a huge deal on representation in Congress and at the Electoral College when it comes to the presidential race. But hired someone here to be focused completely on trying to get us an improved count.
Right.
And also to start working on redistricting. It's a lot more difficult than it sounds. You can't just pull up Google Maps and say, hey, this is what we want to do. You have to have the data in it. You have to get the right software. You have to have the right programs, the right map printing software, printers, I should say, not software and the printers. And so I hired a guy named Keith Bill, who's been involved in redistricting for the last 20 years in Oklahoma, last 2 redistricting cycles in various capacities. And then I appointed Senator Lonnie Paxton out of Tuttle to be the chair of redistricting. And Senator Dave Rader out of Tulsa to be the vice chair. In forthcoming weeks, we will start to release the other members, both Republicans and Democrats, who will take part in this redistricting committee. Obviously, every member of the Senate will touch it, but there will be a committee set up, select committee, appointed by myself, and I'll seek the input of Senator Floyd on the Democrat members of the committee. And we'll move forward and start the business. It doesn't just happen in 2021. The work starts now.
Wow. Okay, gotcha. So with the committee that's being organized here in the Senate, is that just a Senate thing that happens, or does the House do the same thing?
The House does the same thing. Gotcha. They do it on their own timetable. They've announced a plan, a public plan. We're both taking it very seriously, and I applaud their efforts, and I think our efforts are well underway.
Love that. And since the whole thing about redistricting is all about representation and making sure people are being properly represented, it's great to hear that the minority party and with Senator Floyd is going to be involved in that process as well. So very cool deal.
And we take it very seriously, very seriously. And we're going to treat it with the utmost integrity and level of seriousness it deserves.
Love it. Awesome. Well, Beyond that, unless there's something else you wanted to add on the census or the redistricting.
No, if people have questions, send them our way. But we'll keep updating.
That's good. It's a topic that really, like I said before, not many people know about, but it's just a significant and very important issue that goes on here every 10 years, right? And it's not just an Oklahoma deal, too, right? It's other states that have to.
Oh, every state in the union will be doing this,
Gotcha.
and we need to make sure. Again, I can't overemphasize it. There are some people who choose not to send the paper ballot back in. This is the first year that majority of the work will be done online.
Wow. Okay.
And so it's a concern in a state like Oklahoma, where we do have less access to high-speed internet and less people just using the internet than our peer states around the country.
Right.
We need to make sure people participate. So we're going to put out every effort to educate through our Republican and Democrat senators to their constituencies back home why it's important. Because there are some people that choose not to fill it out. They fall into conspiracy theories or other things, or they just don't see the importance of it. Right. And there are certain communities within Oklahoma that disproportionately don't fill it out.
Wow. Okay.
So it's I can't underscore how important it is for our state, not just to make sure our legislative districts are drawn properly and our congressional districts, but to make sure that every people group, every person is counted.
I love that. I didn't realize that it was so heavily dependent on just everyday citizens being a part of the process as well. So you're saying without them being heavily involved, I mean, that all depends on the amount of data and the correct data that's received on our end. Is that correct?
Yeah. Your output is only as good as your input, and we've got to have the right input.
Love it. Okay. Well, like Pro Tim said, if you have any other questions on that, if you're listening at home, you have questions on how you can get involved and making sure that you're a part of that process, please email us. We have our email at ondeck@oksenate.gov. Pro Tim, I wanted to get your thoughts on one more topic here before we head out for this week, and it's the topic of the governor put out his executive order on federal grants, and for somebody who may have seen the headline, they don't know all the details of why that's significant. Can you kind of walk us through what that was and why it's significant?
Yeah, absolutely. So Oklahoma, our appropriated budget's about $7 billion. And then counting federal and other monies that come into the state government, including fees that people pay directly, it's about $24 billion that we spend annually. And so some of those monies come in the form of grants.
Okay.
So an agency, hypothetical agency X, decides that this program is extremely important. They see that there's a federal grant that's available to do that, and they try to match that program the best they can with the federal grant.
Right.
They apply for that federal grant and try to secure those monies for Oklahoma.
Okay.
All good and well.
In order to run that program. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, all good and well. It's Oklahomans pay into the federal taxes as well, and we do need to get some of those grants. The problem is twofold. Number one, some state agencies have sought grants that cause them to either violate the position we're trying to take as a state policy-wise, or that go outside mission creep. They go way outside their mission because they see money out here, and so they change their mission somewhat, slightly at first, and then over time it becomes mission creep. Right. And so they go for those monies, and sometimes we wouldn't otherwise have that program without that federal grant.
So the money becomes the motivation in that
absolutely. That's much better way to say it, yes. And then there's also something a little bit more nefarious. So I guess it's actually threefold. I said twofold. Is that you could go out there and get the state on the hook for money, because most of these grants have a period of time for which they're valid. Right. Or they step down the federal money and expect you to step up the state money. So you have a program that's got a 5-year life to it, and then you build a constituency in, or people dependent on that money, and then these agencies or entities may send out a letter, hey, if the legislature doesn't act, your program's going away. And it's not a program we created, the governor created. It was created outside of that scope. So I've been working on this for, 5-6 years, actually got a bill to the governor's desk simply requiring transparency on what strings were attached to those federal grants. And the previous administration vetoed that bill. Okay. I was upset about that. And then we tried different ways of getting at that. I'm excited the governor issued his executive order. Right. which requires it to go through an approval process through his cabinet and through his office, which I think is going to be extremely important.
Right.
However, it's an executive order. So I put out a press statement saying how excited I was. I am excited. I'm still excited. I think it's the right move. But if we want that to have lasting change, we need to probably try to codify some of that executive order language so we can have a lasting impact beyond the Stitt administration well into the future.
Gotcha. So it sounds like it's not like the gate is just being closed on federal grants or anything like that. It's just the process to get those money and have access to the money is just going to be a little bit more monitored now. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We just want to know what our long-term obligations are and what our short-term obligations are as far as changing anything we do within those agencies. So state agencies are led by great Oklahomans.
Yes.
And, there are a lot of really good people doing these things. So I don't want to insinuate they're doing anything that is, I used the word nefarious earlier, but there are certain times that even through innocent means, they get us way outside of the scope of what we're trying to do as policymakers and the governor's trying to do in leading the executive branch.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, you mentioned how the legislature is going to be a part of that process. Moving forward, hopefully, is that correct?
Well, I hope so. That was not obviously part of the governor's executive order. The governor's executive order made it happen, but the executive orders expire upon the end of a term of a governor, and so I would like to see have longer term consequences to it. I still need to talk to the speaker and the governor, and we'll continue to have those dialogues. But I think we're all in agreement that we need to be good stewards of taxpayer money, and this is just one avenue.
Love that. Absolutely. Well, and that's something that I think that everyday Oklahomans can get behind it and get excited about. One, that just their tax dollars are being monitored and being well taken care of, and two, that it's not just limiting and cutting off programs at all. It's just making sure that those are being efficient and worthwhile. Is that correct?
And within the scope of the mission of the agency seeking it. So yes.
Love that. Awesome. Well, Pro Tim, thank you so much for walking us through these two very, very important issues with redistricting and the census coming up. One, everyday Oklahomans need to know about that, need to know how they can get involved and know what an important role they play in that whole process, and how the legislature is going to be involved in that process. But two, the federal grant deal, that's gotten a lot of attention lately. So I just want to get your thoughts on that and see what you thought about it. So
yeah, there are some very good grants that come back to the state of Oklahoma. No one has a desire to cut those off. Just have more transparency around the grants we are getting.
Love it. Absolutely.
This is your last episode.
This is my last episode, actually.
Episode 30. You can only last through 36. You can only put up with me that long.
I could not take any more. No, that is not correct at all. But this will be my last episode. Unfortunately, it's been a huge pleasure just being able to learn from you and be able to have this avenue to be able to talk about legislation and policy and important matters for Oklahomans in a new way that hadn't been presented before.
Yeah, Caden's moving on, and for those of you who tune in to listen to Caden, you'll be saddened next time you turn in. I'll be saddened. You're a tremendous employee of the Senate, tremendous member of the Senate family. Moving on to, I won't say bigger and better things. You're moving on to other things.
Yes, other things, not necessily bigger or better.
That's a great opportunity for you and your family, and honored that you worked with us for the amount of time you did. You've been with the Senate family for quite some time now.
5 years. Oh man, 5 years.
Since you were 17 years old.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Not quite that young, but pretty close.
Yeah. So but you've done a tremendous job. One of the things when I got elected pro tem that I told my caucus and told the Senate at large was that we were going to step our communications game up, and you and Aaron Cooper have done a tremendous job of doing that. And I appreciate all the work you put into helping create this show and the many mechanisms that we communicate to people that we weren't communicating in those manners just a year ago. So thank you for your part in that. I wish you the best of luck in your new endeavor.
Thank you very much, Pro Tim. That really does mean a ton. And also, you gave Aaron a shout out. Aaron's behind the cameras every episode. Aaron Cooper is the man behind the scenes making all this happen. So shout out to Aaron as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, hey guys, thank you so much for joining us. This is my last episode, but hopefully the podcast will continue. Right?
It will continue.
Great, absolutely.
It won't be the same. Hey, it's Caden Cleveland. I'm still working on that.
You're going to have to start it now.
Hey, it's Greg Treat. Maybe I can have you on as a special guest sometime.
Oh man, I can be a special guest now. I like it.
Well, I didn't say you could. I said maybe.
The potential is there.
The potential. Keep your hopes up.
Okay, but I'll keep working at it.
All right.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you've been able to learn a little bit more about just what's going on here with Oklahoma, with the redistricting coming up, the 2020 census, how important that is for Oklahomans. That's both in a small and also a big picture. That really is a significant issue. But then also just the what's being done on the federal grants, been tracking those, just to make sure that our tax dollars are being well taken care of.
You know what I just started thinking? I was not listening to anything you were saying, but
unreal.
The thing we announced your marriage on here.
It's a very significant thing.
Yeah,
my engagement, my marriage.
Yeah. This has been. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well,
next
you guys have just been with me through the past year of craziness.
I know. Episode 37 is going to be. Maybe we'll have a montage of all the outtakes from your previous
I told Aaron I was just going to do a montage of, hey, everybody, what's going on? Caden Cleveland here, and just do about 30
before you
of
actually leave, could you create that?
Yeah, I will get that done for you.
All right.
All right, you're getting some behind-the-scenes footage here of us just having a conversation. But, guys, thank you again so much. This has been a pleasure having the podcast, and if you do have any questions, feel free to email us. The ondeck@oksenate.gov email address is set up directly for this podcast to answer whatever questions that you have for the President Pro Tem Treat. And if you do have anybody that you'd like to see on the show with President Pro Tem Treat, you can feel free to request anybody. If somebody you'd like to hear from, we'd love to hear that as well. So beyond that, Pro Tem, you got anything else?
No, I really do. In all sincerity, I appreciate your service to the Senate.
Thank you very much.
You're going to continue your service to the state, but thank you so much for the tremendous work you did for us.
Absolutely. Well, hey, guys, thank you so much again. And I guess Pro Tem Treat, we'll see you again on the next episode of OK Senate on Deck. Bye, guys.